pick a game.
One of my favorite ways for a game to be designed is for it to focus on systems-driven gameplay. I like it when making one action can lead to another, which can lead to another, with emergent gameplay taking the lead. But I also like it when games can rein that in, so that the systems don't get too out of hand. Designing very specific encounters that should commonly lead to certain outcomes that are interesting is always a smart thing to do. Random mobs can only get you so far. This balance can create some really great gameplay scenarios. If ever there was a game series that encapsulated that idea in recent years, it'd probably be Far Cry. Far Cry 3, released in North America on December 4th, 2012, was my first genuine foray into the series, though I had briefly played Far Cry 2 and Far Cry Instinct's Predator, I believe. At the time, I didn't quite understand what Far Cry was, both because Instincts was misleading and because I didn't spend much time with either game. But after seeing Angry Joe's review of Far Cry 3, I was dying to pick the series up for real. Far Cry 3 is a story about an island full of pirates and natives, where a young man named Jason Brody and his friends get kidnapped. Brody escapes, and as him, you're now tasked with finding your remaining friends, getting revenge on the pirates, and escaping the island. Along the way, you'll meet many colorful characters, and many more hardships that will ask Brody what he's willing to become in order to save everyone. The game is an open-world first-person shooter, where destruction and mayhem are core aspects of the design. The player has immense control over their environment compared to most shooters, leading to an ocean of options for dealing with threats. And that is where we'll begin. Far Cry 3's design was somewhat fresh for the time of release, but has since been used in basically every Ubisoft game there is. Sure, it technically comes from Assassin's Creed, and was adopted by Far Cry, but even up to Far Cry 3, it had yet to become the standard for that publisher. So obviously, that means a few things. This is an open world. There are towers to climb which mark up your map when you get to the top. There are tons and tons of side activities in the hopes that you'll never be bored. And in this game, that actually kind of works. Particularly because unlocking most side activities actually comes from conquering bases. These bases, while optional, are a core part of the design of Far Cry 3, because this is where you'll get a lot of your emergent gameplay. In Far Cry 3, nearly every safe haven has to be earned by defeating all the enemies in the base. These combat scenarios are crafted to be interesting and unique, despite all seeming the same on the surface. This is done to try and get the player to think about different ways to deal with the enemies and claim the base for their own. Success means you get a safe room to stock up on guns, ammo, and items, the ability to fast travel to that location anytime, it lowers the enemy presence in the area, and it also earns you access to a few other side objectives. This other side content is super diverse. There are challenges where you're supposed to get as many kills as possible in a short amount of time, using the weapon provided. There are hunts for super rare, often super strong animals. There are vehicle races, laptops with secret documents to find, ancient tribal artifacts everywhere. There's a lot to do here. Importantly though, nearly all of it challenges the core skills required to play the game. Far Cry 3 is really good at not getting caught up in mini-games that have no purpose, or are uninteresting. Basically, the only one that doesn't directly ask you for skills required for the normal game is gambling. I would go into deeper detail about what this game offers, but seriously, there's just far too much to talk about. There are loads of traversal options, even more ways to approach enemies in combat, many ways to interact with the environment and AI. This is a densely packed game, so it's important that the things on offer are consistent and entertaining. Otherwise, it could really easily turn into one of those pointless side quest checklists that most other modern Ubisoft games have become. This game, luckily, didn't miss the forest for the trees, ensuring that your time is spent in meaningful ways. Far Cry 3 revels in its systems, with loud and brash graphics, some insane enemy units, and plenty of crazy abilities for the player to unlock. These abilities are spread between 3 unlock trees, though realistically that just seems to be a way to make everything look cleaner. Abilities range from statistical upgrades like faster reloads, more health, and better resistance to fall damage, to more creatively useful things, like the ability to throw an enemy's knife at another enemy when you stealth kill them, or the ability to walk much faster while you're crouched, and be a lot quieter. Abilities are shown through what the game calls tatau, or tribal tattoos. By the end, your arms are covered with tattoos. The abilities are generally useful, generally interesting, and almost always afford the player a tangible boost to their enormous arsenal. As you play, you unlock the ability to access more abilities. While that inherently limits the player's creativity in what abilities they choose to unlock in the early game, you're likely to have nearly all the abilities by the end of the main story. One ability in particular that's unlocked about halfway through the game could have easily broken it if the balance was off. Thankfully, the team understood good enemy mob design and kept the balance on point. That's more than I can say for Far Cry 4, which really hurt itself because of this very same ability. What ability am I talking about? Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4 have heavy enemy soldiers, which normally can't be stealth killed. Eventually though, you unlock the ability that allows you to do so. Far Cry 3 at least, somewhat understood that it's designed to be played in a multitude of ways, both stealthy and otherwise, so you can only run across around 4 to 6 heavy soldiers before you have access to the ability that allows you to stealth kill them. Far Cry 4 throws tons of heavies at you before you can unlock that ability, making stealth in that game rather restrictive, and in some places torturous. Enemies in Far Cry basically have 3 states: normal, cautious, and alerted to your presence. Without this ability, it's all but impossible to kill a heavy without putting everyone else in the caution state, meaning they're likely to get alerted unless you save the heavies till the end, assuming you can in that particular base. The problem is, the games give you experience boosts for clearing a base without the enemy being alerted, so it feels rather antithetical to the freedom of the design it tries to offer, when Far Cry 4 throws tons of enemies at you that you can't really kill stealthily. I was super excited for Far Cry 4 when it released, and that one change utterly disappointed me, because it made my preferred playstyle much too difficult. Instead, I just sort of stealthed while I could and then run and gunned everything, and died a lot because of it. Far Cry 3 is much more accommodating, as was intended. Like I said, very few heavies show up before you have access to this ability, and the bases tend to be a little bit more open, and missions a little bit less linear in design, allowing you more freedom in how you go about things. However, that doesn't mean it still doesn't have issues. The biggest, in terms of accommodation, is that nearly all experience boosts revolve around stealth. You get extra experience for stealth kills, stealth multi-kills, no alarms when clearing a base, no alerted soldiers when clearing a base, etc. There aren't any experience boosts for other playstyles that they can really take advantage of. So all of the cool ideas like ghost riding a jeep with C4 strapped to it into the center of a base, and then blowing it up, or catching the whole place on fire, or just running in guns a-blazing, all of these ideas are almost guaranteed to get you caught, losing you absolutely tons of experience. A good middle ground would have been to offer other experience boosts, like a boost for getting a certain amount of headshots, or clearing the base in a certain amount of time, or while reaching a certain havoc level, or chaining non-stealth kills, or letting the alarms go off and dealing with the reinforcements. As it stands, while different playstyles are all valid from a systematic gameplay perspective, you won't be offered the same rewards. Still, the dynamic nature of everything can end up with some rather fantastic results. For example, there's one base that just has a ton of dogs in it. The dogs are difficult units to deal with, because while they can't pull alarms, they often seem to be much quicker to notice you, and they're harder to shoot at. I was able to clear out all the human enemies in this base, but was then left with several dogs and no way to take them out one by one in a stealthy manner. So That sort of thing is by far the best part of Far Cry 3. While most of your equipment can be used to directly kill enemies, much of it can also be used in ways that indirectly kill enemies. There's a big difference between killing a dude with a flamethrower and lighting a patch of grass on fire and watching the base burn down. You can shoot guns at enemies, or you can shoot the lock off of dangerous animal cages. Heck, you don't even have to use your equipment as secondary ways to kill enemies. You can start the grass on fire for no other reason than to distract enemies. There were many times where I'd release a dangerous animal not in the hopes that they'd kill enemies, but rather to draw all the enemies out so that I could mark them with my camera. A big arsenal is only worth having if it's useful, and it's only fun if you can fully own how you choose to use these tools. Otherwise, you just get a bunch of quote-unquote keys that unlock the quote-unquote doors to specific enemy types in Trails. The gameplay is less dynamic and more scripted that way, despite every encounter technically being different on a surface level. Part of this arsenal comes down from you crafting. There's a lot of wildlife in Far Cry 3, some of it much more dangerous than others, and taking these animals down yields skins and such, which can be used to make bigger wallets, bigger inventories, etc. Hunting each animal is different, and offers a unique little mini-challenge. I myself can't stand water in games, so I generally avoid killing the sharks and alligators. In my original file back in 2013, I 100%ed the game. How? I don't know, because the water in this game scares the crap out of me. It's even scary in missions, because while the devs were nice enough to usually make waters you're forced to go into rather clear of any wildlife, there are a few spots where they purposefully hid dangerous animals during the main missions. And I hate it. I hate it so much. Far Cry 3 thrives on its presentation. The music is great, atmospheric background noise so to speak, and it really fits the Pirate Island theme well. Graphically, the game still looks rather good, with bright colors and really interesting art assets, which separate it from other shooters of the time. It also runs really consistently from what I can tell, meaning performance never gets in your way. The story is the most important part of the presentation here though. Far Cry 3 tries to tell a story of a total bro who's forced to do sickening things to save those who he cares about. But it also asks what it would be like to actually enjoy becoming a monster. Jason Brody is pulled back and forth between three forces. The friends he loves, who would hate to know how many lives he's taken. The natives, who want control of their lives back from the pirates, but are willing to manipulate people to do so. And the absolute loathing he feels for the pirates who took everything from him. This game immerses players in realistically despicable acts before having Brody's friends pull you back to the real world by questioning why you're enjoying such acts. A lot of people talk about the torture scene in GTA 5, and they should, because it's a fantastic mission. But Far Cry 3 also has a rather fantastic, albeit less controllable, torture scene. But it's great for different reasons. Eventually, you make your way within the ranks of the pirates and soldiers, intending to take them out from the inside. At this point, you are to believe that you've saved all of your friends who are still left alive, and you're only fueled by revenge. To prove your worth to the big boss, he asks you to go downstairs and torture someone. And that's when you realize that it's your younger brother, who you thought to be dead, who you're supposed to torture. Compared to you, he's a fragile young man, who still seems to have most of his innocence, and it's your job to beat it out of him. This scene is impactful, because this is someone you've been searching for all this time. This is arguably the most important person you wanted to find. This is someone you thought was dead, and the first thing you're asked to do when you realize he's alive is beat the living hell out of him. If you go easy on him, you've got a base full of dozens, maybe hundreds of men blocking you from escape. You will be found out, and you will be killed. The scene is scripted, and you have to press the button to beat up your brother, but I think it's still effective despite not being more complicated, because thematically, it's the pinnacle of the fight between the monster Jason Brody and the human Jason Brody.
Who have I become?
That's enough. Leave him.
Is the best poker player I've ever met. I need a drink.
While not exactly complex, this plot offers some fantastically deep and likable characters. It's a shame that the main boss is rather forgettable. Throughout most of the game, you're after a sickeningly psychotic pirate known as Voss, who's the one directly responsible for the kidnapping, selling, and killing of your friends. He's a great villain because he's extraordinarily unhinged. His lines and voice acting is a notch above the rest, which is saying something because it's all rather fantastic. But Voss is just fun to watch.
Fuck! Is it going to be them or me? Me or them? like you know, like they fucking think that I need to make a fucking choice. By the way, this lighter really sucks. You know, so much for poetics. It's really too bad that Citra had to hook you up, because now the only way to kill you is to erase you completely. Shh. It's okay. Don't worry. It's okay. Jason.
Unfortunately, around 3/4 the way through the game, you kill him, and he's replaced by the true boss of the enemies, Hoyt. Hoyt isn't necessarily a bad character, but he feels more generic and tame compared to Voss. Voss has layers. His sister is the leader of the rebels trying to take the island back from the pirates. Voss hates the fact that he knows he's the bad guy, and she's the hero. But at the same time, there's a part of him that embraces and adores this fact. If he's gonna be the villain, he might as well be the best damn villain he can be. There are points where his lack of understanding shows, and you almost start to see him as this little lost puppy. Then he pours gasoline on you and tries to burn you alive. Hoyt's a crazy evil businessman. He does evil things because evil, and runs the business because money. I think the best way the story could have gone would have been to show Hoyt more during the early game, and show him as a more nuanced threat. Show him treating Voss, his best soldier, like he's worthless. Then have Voss kill him and take over, leading to the whole organization becoming much more chaotic, but also much more dangerous. Also, Sam is like the best character ever. I absolutely love Sam. I hate that he dies, and I want more Sam. Just thought I'd make that clear.
Who do you work for?
Willis sent me.
How is he? I have been concerned about him, hearing nothing all these years.
He's fine, I guess.
As far as improvements go, I would of course make Voss the true main villain, in the way described above. I would also add incentives to play the game in different ways, by giving experience bonuses for more things. There are also smaller annoyances that I think really need to be taken care of. One of them, I don't know why it's like this because I don't remember it being this way before, is the fact that the map screen is kinda janky. Like, it's super hard to land on the correct icons for things like fast travel. Another thing is how picking up weapons and looting bodies are mapped to the same buttons. Enemies always drop their guns when they die, and they almost always land right next to their bodies, so it really sucks to be given just enough time to loot a body before an enemy comes by and sees you, and to accidentally swap to a different weapon instead. And the opposite is true too, running low on ammo in a firefight and trying to swap weapons only to leave yourself open by accidentally looting a body. Yeah, that sucks. Honestly, I was super scared that I was gonna hate this game this time that I played through it. I loved it the first time, but after having such a terrible time with Far Cry 4, I started to wonder whether Far Cry 3 had the same problems, but I never noticed because I was so enamored by everything else. Nope, it doesn't have those problems. A bit of the wow factor for Far Cry 3 is worn off for sure, but it's still a fantastic game that's really worth playing if you love open-ended first-person shooter combat. It has worthwhile side activities, a world teeming with life, great characters, and a lot of polish for an open-world Ubisoft game. If you haven't played it, and it seems interesting to you, I wouldn't hesitate to get it. It's probably really cheap at this point, so I'd say just buy it. And heck, I didn't even talk about the rather fun multiplayer, the co-op missions, or the amazing map designer, mostly because nobody's playing the multiplayer anymore. Back when this game was released, it was a powerhouse of long-lasting content, and though it's mostly only single player at this point, it's still a great game. But maybe you disagree? Sound off in the comments below with your thoughts, and I'll see you next time.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Oh, Jesus.